Trip, my older brother had a turntable and a rule, and the rule was no Beatles. Now, why I couldn't play any Beatles, I don't know, but I couldn't. And when you were growing up, were there any rules in your household, or did you play by your own rules?
There were no rules in my household. But the funny part of it is that I had my own record player, and I had one when I was really young. Of course, they were the ones with the needles, and they would just ruin records. But I would sit up in my room, and actually one of the albums that I was given, one of the first albums I was given, was the Introducing the Beatles record from VJ Records. I still have that in my collection, but I'm pretty sure it's chewed up, and I couldn't really get any money for it now. And the cover's been taped. That's how old it is. But no rules.
I'm curious, viewers, if you had any rules in your household, like no Elvis or no Rolling Stones, let us know in the comments. So why do I bring up this thing about the Beatles? If I couldn't play the Beatles, who could I play? In my case, it was the Beach Boys and the Four Seasons, I recall. And I've learned as a result of doing this podcast trip that groups like the Beach Boys and the Four Seasons were the American response to the British invasion. And so is the case with our spotlight artist for this episode. It's Gary Lewis and the Playboys. From 65 to 67, roughly, they had 7 top 10 hits. They had 10 in the top 20. Now, spoiler alert, one of those songs actually knocked the Beatles out of the #1 spot. And Trip and you viewers and listeners, I'm wondering if you can name 6 of the Gary Lewis and the Playboys songs.
This Diamond Ring.
This Diamond Ring.
That was their only #1 song. So that's the only one that could have knocked the Beatles out of #1.
Very good. And that was in 1965. Okay. Got any others?
All right. Everybody Loves a Clown. Sure Gonna Miss Her.
Sure Gonna Miss Her. And no, Trip, I'm not going to sing. Absolutely. You got
don't. Please do not.
I'm not going to. 3 out of 6. Very good.
Okay. Green Grass.
Green Grass. Love that song. That one also peaked at number 4. Peaked at number 8. I'm sorry.
I don't know if this would be on the list. My Summer Symphony, I think, is the name of it. I know it's Summer Symphony at some point. We played
very good. Very good. It's. I think this is the one you're talking about. My Heart's Symphony.
Yes, thank you. Okay, thank you. My Heart's Symphony. Yeah, I'm drawing a blank, and and you know something, I can. It's funny, Phil. I can picture the album because actually I was looking in the record store the other day. I was going to pick it up to bring to Vinylthon at Ashland. And Gary Lewis, I'm going to kick myself because I know I'm missing some, but I'm drawing a blank right now.
They had a couple songs that peaked at number 2. One of them was called, referred to a number, like as if you're calculating numbers. Count Me In. Count Me In.
I like that song. Yeah, that's another one. And then I'm missing one more. I know I am.
There's one also from 65 about keeping a part of your body for me.
Save Your Heart for Me.
Save Your Heart for Me. So you've got 6. Here are the other ones. Let's go through the entire list. Just Diamond Ring, Count Me In, Save Your Heart for Me, She's Just My Style, Everybody Loves a Clown, Green Grass, Sure Gonna Miss Her, My Heart Symphony, One I wasn't that familiar with, You Don't Have to Paint Me a Picture. And then he did a cover of a Brian Hyland song, Trip.
Seal with a Kiss.
Sealed with a Kiss. Yep, that was in 68. That was actually their final top 20 hit. Before we flip to the B-side, at the end of this episode, I want to ask Trip for his 3 favorite songs from Gary Lewis and the Playboys. Please share yours in the comments below. I'm going to select one of yours and Trip's 3 to put in the Trippin Up Triple Play playlist. That'll be at the end of this episode. So let's get into the B-side. So far, we've chatted about the Waxed. Time for the B-side when we dig into the facts. Trip, do you have anything on Gary Lewis and the Playboys?
Well, obviously, one of the things about Gary Lewis and the Playboys is his father was Jerry Lewis, and he decided he wanted to get into music. So Jerry, of course, had a lot of friends out in Hollywood, and he hooked them up with producer Snuff Garrett, who produced a lot of big artists out on the West Coast. And the thing was, on the Gary Lewis and the Playboys songs, they used the Wrecking Crew. So you had Hal Blaine playing drums, Glen Campbell, I just mentioned Leon Russell, were members of it, Tommy Tedesco, but they used the Wrecking Crew as their background. And Gary Lewis and the Playboys had some hits, but then Gary was had to serve in the Army and went into the Army, and that kind of ruined the momentum for the group because Gary had to leave. He was the guy. The other interesting part about Gary Lewis and the Playboys is Gary was a drummer, and Gary would play behind the drum kit. Well, there weren't too many groups that featured drummers. I mean, Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees, but most of them usually were they would stand out in front. They'd be the lead singer, but Gary would play drums, and that was kind of an interesting paradox on this. He would recruit. He had a couple of guitarists, and the thing about Gary Lewis was, after he had he really couldn't resurrect his career. He did Seal with a Kiss, you mentioned. That was after his Army commitment to Missouri, but by then pop music had moved on, and Gary Lewis moved on with his life. He was somewhat estranged from his father. And of course, the story was when Jerry died, he did not give any money to his kids from his first marriage. And Gary was one of those. And that's a very famous story. But Gary Lewis and the Playboys, again, had a number of hits. And this was back in the day when it was all about singles. It was not about albums. And most of the albums that they put out had a bunch of filler material. And I want to say Sealed with a Kiss was recorded during one of the sessions for their albums during their hit years. And then the reason why it was re-released is because, again, they needed to release something and they decided to give that a shot.
You talked about the draft. There was another famous person that also was drafted and served. And that, of course, was Elvis. And as I understand it, while Elvis was in the Army, Tom Parker, is that who it was from Sun Records? Who was it? Colonel Parker? Is that the guy's name?
Colonel Tom Parker.
He would
Colonel
be
Tom Parker. You're right.
He would be releasing Elvis songs that were, quote unquote, in the vault to keep Elvis relevant until Elvis returned. And then there's one more thing that I have for the B-side. Gary Lewis and the Playboys are one of 2 artists in the 60s to have their first 7 releases hit the top 10. That's pretty remarkable. Can you?
Oh, yeah. Well,
go ahead.
Listen, it was a singles oriented era. And again, when one song was coming down the charts, you would want to release another one. And that was part of the record making process. And you would do this rinse and repeat. And Gary Lewis and the Playboys were a part of that. Again, Lou Adler, I think, because the record company, they were on Liberty Records, if I'm not mistaken. They just kept pushing material out. And That was modus operandi back then. It was a singles oriented business, and it changed over to a album oriented business when after the Beatles released Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Gary Lewis and the Playboys were one of two groups. Their first 7 hit the top 10. Can you name the other group? And I got to tell you,
You said in the 60s, correct?
In the 60s. I would have never got this in 100 years. Got any ideas?
I mean, the Turtles would be a guess in the 60s. It's not the Beatles, because the Beatles had released Please Please Me a year before they had the invasion in 1963. Actually, we just passed the anniversary of that, should mention. I have no idea.
The Lovin' Spoonful.
Enlighten me.
The Lovin' Spoonful.
Okay, I can see that. Yes.
Wow.
I can see that.
Yeah, you just never know what kind of trivia Phil's going to pull out as he compiles the information of the Flip Side team, the Flip Side Cafe. Hey, what's your favorite song? Let us know in the comments. Trip, what 3 songs do you have from this group that you'd like to add to our Trippin Up triple play playlist?
Okay. One of my favorite songs, and I know this is going to surprise you, the song Sure Gonna Miss Her has 2 different versions. There was a single version, and then there was an album version that has over the years has kind of replaced it. It's got this mariachi type sound at the beginning of it, and musically. And but I've always liked that song, and I don't like the mariachi version. I like the single version, which I play on WTRS. But I'll go Sure Gonna Miss Her, Everybody Loves a Clown, and of course This Diamond Ring, which is the quintessential Gary Lewis and the Playboys song.
And I promised you I wouldn't sing. I'm not going to sing, but I could very easily sing Green Grass. Again, listeners, let us know.
Oh, another great song.
Listeners, let us know. I'm going to pick one from the comments and add it to the playlist. The link to that playlist, by the way, will be in this video description. Hey, if you want to follow Trip, there's many ways you can do that. You can listen to him weekday afternoons on Q 105.3. That's in Savannah, Georgia, WRHQ.com, and on WTRSradio.com on the TuneIn radio app. Look at that logo right there. You can also check out his music yearbook. That's on Facebook and various stations, including Vinyl 91.9 WBNJ in Barnegat. Did I get that right? Barnegat, New Jersey, and 105. Barnegat. 105.7.5. 107.5. There it is. WRUU in Savannah, Georgia. Thanks for joining us. Let's do this again. Keep the coffee brewing, the conversation flowing, and those music memories spinning by watching one of these videos right now.